Welcome to Fact Zone. I'm Alex, and today we're tackling a tough but vital subject: nations on the brink of collapse. Around the world, countries are unraveling due to conflict, economic disaster, and political chaos. We'll examine 10 nations facing severe crises, exploring the history, triggers, and human impact. This isn't about sensationalism, it's about understanding the real stories behind the headlines. By connecting these dots, we gain empathy and insight into global trends that affect us all. Let's dive in and see what's really happening in these collapsing states. Let's get started. If you think Iran's troubles are just headline drama, think again. Beneath the surface, things are unraveling fast. Here's why experts are calling it one of the world's fastest collapsing countries. Let's break it down. Iran's economy? It's in free fall. Years of harsh international sanctions have squeezed the country dry. Inflation is through the roof. Everyday essentials are now luxuries. The currency, the rial, has lost over 90% of its value in just a decade. But it's not just about money. Water shortages are hitting hard, especially as droughts get worse. In some regions, taps run dry for weeks. Farmers are abandoning their land. Villages are turning into ghost towns. Politically, the pressure's boiling over. Massive protests sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini in 2022 haven't really stopped. They've just gone underground. The government is cracking down harder than ever, but the anger isn't fading. And let's talk demographics. Iran's young population is fed up. Millions of skilled Iranians are leaving. Brain drain at record levels. The ones who stay, many are unemployed and disillusioned. On top of all this, international tensions keep Iran isolated. Ongoing conflicts, nuclear standoffs, and regional power struggles make recovery even harder. So, is Iran collapsing? The signs are everywhere: economic meltdown, water crises, political unrest, and a population desperate for change. Unless something big shifts, Iran could be heading for even tougher times ahead. Our journey begins in Ukraine, a nation steeped in history and culture, now facing an unprecedented challenge. We'll delve into the heart of this conflict, exploring its origins, its impact, and the unwavering spirit of its people. Ukraine stands as a symbol of resilience under relentless attack, a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure even the most devastating circumstances. The world watches as they defend their homeland. The 2022 invasion was a brutal escalation, a turning point that shattered the fragile peace and plunged the region into chaos. It marked a new, devastating phase in a long and complex history, of a conflict simmering since 2014, when tensions first flared and the seeds of this larger war were sown. The annexation of Crimea and the fighting in eastern Ukraine were early warning signs, plunging Europe into its largest war since World War II. The scale of destruction and displacement is unlike anything seen in generations, forcing a re-evaluation of the continent's security architecture. Cities like Mariupol, once vibrant hubs of commerce and culture, and Bakhmut, now stand as haunting reminders of the war's destructive power, have been reduced to rubble, their streets echoing with the ghosts of what once was. The landscape is scarred, and the rebuilding process will be long and arduous. And Ukraine's vital agricultural sector is crippled, disrupting global supply chains and threatening food security for millions around the world. Fields once abundant with crops are now battlegrounds, fueling global food insecurity. The ripple effects of this conflict extend far beyond Ukraine's borders, impacting vulnerable populations across the globe. The cost of reconstruction is staggering, a monumental undertaking that will require international cooperation and sustained investment for years to come. And millions have been displaced, forced to flee their homes and seek refuge in neighboring countries, leaving behind their lives and livelihoods, creating Europe's largest refugee crisis since the 1940s. Families are torn apart and communities are scattered, leaving a lasting scar on the social fabric of the region. The psychological toll is immense, with countless individuals grappling with trauma, loss, and the uncertainty of the future. With a national mental health crisis unfolding, demanding urgent attention and resources to support those affected by the horrors of war. Yet, Ukrainians remain united, demonstrating remarkable solidarity and resilience in the face of adversity. Fighting for their identity and future, determined to defend their sovereignty and rebuild their nation. This war is a stark reminder of how quickly stability can vanish and how fragile peace can be, even in the heart of Europe. With global consequences for energy markets, as the conflict disrupts supply chains and drives up prices, impacting economies worldwide, food supplies and international law, challenging the foundations of the global order and raising fundamental questions about the future of international relations. Ukraine's struggle is about more than territory. It's a fight for its very existence as an independent nation. It's about the right to self-determination, the freedom to choose its own path and shape its own destiny without external interference. The collapse here is of infrastructure and normalcy, a devastating blow to the country's economy and social fabric, not spirit. The Ukrainian spirit remains unbroken, a beacon of hope in the face of unimaginable adversity. Next, Afghanistan, a nation with a rich history and a resilient people. A nation tragically trapped in a seemingly endless cycle of conflict for over 40 years, leaving deep scars on its society and infrastructure. The echoes of war resonate through every aspect of life. The Taliban's swift and decisive 2021 takeover of the country abruptly ended a two-decade nation-building effort almost overnight, unraveling years of progress and investment in a matter of weeks. The international community watched in disbelief as the country's trajectory shifted dramatically. The takeover effectively isolating Afghanistan from the global community, severing vital connections and hindering the flow of essential resources. Consequently, foreign aid, a crucial lifeline for the Afghan people, vanished almost entirely. The already fragile banking system froze solid, crippling financial transactions and economic activity. And as a result, the economy, heavily reliant on international support, collapsed swiftly and dramatically, leaving widespread devastation in its wake. This economic freefall pushed millions of vulnerable Afghans to the very brink of starvation, creating a humanitarian catastrophe of immense proportions. Furthermore, women and girls have been systematically erased from public life, stripped of their rights and opportunities, and confined to the shadows. This repression is further deepening the crisis, and effectively crippling any realistic hope of long-term recovery and stability for the nation. The already strained healthcare system is now in complete ruins, unable to cope with the overwhelming needs of the population. Consequently, child malnutrition is rampant, threatening an entire generation with irreversible damage. Afghanistan now faces a full-blown humanitarian disaster of unprecedented scale, requiring urgent and sustained international attention. This is compounded by the fact that there is little meaningful international engagement, leaving the country isolated and vulnerable. Adding to the instability are the growing threats posed by various extremist groups operating within the country's borders. The collapse wasn't just political in nature. It completely destroyed a fragile framework of social and economic progress that had offered a glimmer of hope to millions of Afghans. Now the ordinary Afghans face a future overwhelmingly defined by pervasive poverty, crippling isolation from the rest of the world, and systematic oppression under a restrictive regime. While the world's attention has largely faded from Afghanistan, the humanitarian crisis continues to deepen with each passing day, demanding renewed and sustained global action. In Zimbabwe, decades of economic mismanagement and political repression have fueled a slow-motion collapse. Hyperinflation has wiped out savings, making daily life a struggle as basic goods become unaffordable. Once a breadbasket, Zimbabwe now relies on food aid, with agriculture crippled by failed land reforms and climate change. Infrastructure and healthcare are crumbling, driving skilled workers to emigrate. The ruling party's grip on power stifles reform and enables corruption. Elections are marred by violence and intimidation, blocking democratic progress. Zimbabwe's tragedy is not sudden, but the result of years of poor governance. The people's resilience is remarkable, but without real reform, the cycle of decline will continue. The nation's potential remains hostage to its politics. In Myanmar, a land once brimming with promise and potential, a dark chapter has unfolded. The nation, rich in culture and history, now faces a crisis that threatens to unravel its very fabric. A 2021 military coup shattered a fragile democracy, abruptly halting the country's transition towards a more open and representative government. The dreams of progress and reform were suddenly replaced by the harsh reality of military rule. This power grab ignited a nationwide resistance, as citizens from all walks of life rose up to challenge the authority of the junta. Civil servants, doctors, and teachers, the backbone of society, joined mass protests, refusing to legitimize the new regime. They bravely stood their ground, demanding a return to democratic principles. But their peaceful demonstrations were met with brutal military crackdowns. The response from the Tatmadaw was swift and merciless. In response, the opposition formed a shadow government, a parallel administration dedicated to restoring democracy and challenging the legitimacy of the junta. Faced with unrelenting repression, some took up arms, forming an armed resistance, determined to fight for their freedom. This escalation plunged the country into a devastating civil war, pitting neighbor against neighbor and tearing apart the social fabric. The military's scorched earth tactics, characterized by indiscriminate violence and destruction, have displaced millions from their homes, forcing them to seek refuge in overcrowded camps or across borders. This mass displacement has created a humanitarian catastrophe, with widespread suffering and a desperate need for assistance. Tragically, aid is blocked, preventing life-saving assistance from reaching those who need it most, and the economy has collapsed, leaving millions struggling to survive. As a result, foreign investment has fled, further crippling the nation's economic prospects. Consequently, poverty is soaring, pushing countless families into desperate circumstances. The junta rules by force, suppressing dissent and maintaining its grip on power through fear and intimidation. They are plundering resources to fund its war, enriching themselves while the country suffers. Myanmar is now a patchwork of conflict zones, a fractured nation struggling to hold itself together. The conflict continues with no end in sight, casting a long shadow over the future of the country. The hopes of a generation have been crushed, their dreams of a better future replaced by the harsh realities of war and oppression. Their aspirations have been replaced by violence and division, leaving deep scars on the nation's psyche. Yet, the people continue to fight for democracy, clinging to the hope of a brighter tomorrow. But this fight comes at a tremendous cost, with countless lives lost and families torn apart. The nation is fragmenting, its social and political structures strained to the breaking point. Myanmar faces a protracted conflict looming with an uncertain future hanging in the balance. The road to peace and reconciliation will be long and arduous. In Sudan, a power struggle between rival generals erupted into civil war in 2023, ending hopes for democracy. Brutal fighting has devastated cities, destroyed infrastructure, and triggered the world's largest internal displacement crisis. Millions have fled and famine looms as food supply chains collapse. The healthcare system is in ruins and the economy has imploded. The central government has ceased to function, replaced by warlords and militias. Sudan's revolution promised freedom, but military leaders hijacked the future. The country is now a failed state with dire consequences for the region. International efforts to mediate have so far failed. Venezuela, despite vast oil reserves, has collapsed under authoritarian rule and economic mismanagement. Hyperinflation has destroyed the currency, and shortages of food, medicine, and fuel are widespread. The health and education systems have crumbled, creating a lost generation. Over 7 million have fled, making this one of the world's largest migration crises. The Maduro regime has dismantled democracy, jailing opponents and enriching a corrupt elite. The country's oil wealth now fuels only the privileged few. Venezuela is a stark warning of how corruption and ideology can destroy a nation from within. Ordinary people are left to struggle for survival. Recovery will be a monumental challenge. Haiti faces a perfect storm of gang violence, political chaos, and natural disasters. Armed gangs control much of the capital, paralyzing the economy and making daily life perilous. The assassination of the president left a power vacuum, with no functioning parliament or elected leader. The state has lost control, and criminal groups rule. Natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, compound the misery, with little capacity to respond. Extreme poverty and hunger are widespread, and cholera has returned. Humanitarian aid is limited, especially in gang-controlled areas. Haiti's collapse is a multifaceted catastrophe with no clear path forward. Millions are trapped in a desperate struggle for survival. The world watches, but solutions remain elusive. Lebanon, once a banking hub, is now an economic freefall due to corruption and a failed financial system. A state-sponsored Ponzi scheme enriched elites while bankrupting the nation. The Lebanese pound has lost nearly all its value, and most people now live in poverty. Basic goods, electricity, and medicine are scarce. The middle class has vanished. Political paralysis and sectarian power sharing have blocked reform. The 2020 Beirut port explosion symbolized the state's criminal negligence. Lebanon also hosts over 1 million refugees, straining resources further. The country is a case study in how corruption can hollow out a nation from within. Recovery is stalled by entrenched leaders clinging to power. The crisis has left Lebanon's future deeply uncertain. Pakistan, a nuclear-armed nation, faces a dangerous mix of economic, political, and security crises. Chronic instability, debt, and inflation have pushed millions into poverty. Political power struggles and military interference block reforms and fuel unrest. Militant attacks and climate disasters, like the 2022 floods, have devastated the country. The government relies on unpopular austerity measures to secure international aid. Pakistan's challenges threaten not just its own stability but that of the entire region. The path to recovery requires unity and long-term vision, both in short supply. The nation stands at a critical crossroads. Sri Lanka's recent economic meltdown is a warning to developing nations everywhere. Years of unsustainable debt and disastrous policies, like tax cuts and a fertilizer ban, crippled the economy. The collapse of tourism and rising global prices drained foreign reserves, leading to shortages of fuel, food, and medicine. Massive protests forced the president to resign, toppling a powerful ruling family. An IMF bailout has brought some relief, but recovery will be slow and painful. The crisis has left deep scars on society and trust in government. Sri Lanka's story shows how quickly a country can unravel, and how citizens can demand change. The road ahead is uncertain, but the people have shown their power. We've seen how state collapse is never just about politics or economics. It's about real people. These crises are interconnected with ripple effects that reach us all. Staying informed is the first step toward empathy and action. Support credible journalism and aid organizations making a difference. Share this video if it deepened your understanding. Subscribe for more insights into our complex world. Thank you for watching, and stay curious.